EP21 Tim here. ITIYL episode 21. I'll talk if you'll listen. Episode 21. Thank you for sticking around for another week. Thank you for tuning in. And I appreciate all of you as always. So, not many topics to cover this week, but many thoughts behind the topic to cover this week. And I also want to give you guys a recap on some of the things I talked about last week. And I also have a special treat for you towards the end of the show. If you've been sticking around, at least for the past 3 weeks, you know that I've started to go to therapy. And last week I had my first therapy session, and I spoke about it a bit in last week's episode. So I encourage you to go check that out. But the most important thing that I want you to check out is from 2 episodes ago, episode 19, I interviewed 3 gentlemen surrounding therapy, specifically therapy when it comes to men. And one interviewee actually spoke specifically about therapy and the way it's viewed in the Black community. So definitely check that out. Check those interviews out. I think they're really, really touching. All 3 guests made valid points. So shout out to the ITIYL Thoughts guests on episode 19. Another thing I encourage you to do is go and listen to episode 20. That's last week's episode if you haven't already. I talked about how to actually get access to therapy. So one of my philosophies, you've heard it for a bit now, is you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of things that a lot of the baby boomers expect adults under 40 to kind of just know are certain things that they grew up with, right? We're expected to know things like taxes and insurance and healthcare and all this other stuff that we may not have been put in a position to know. We're kind of just expected to know. And if we don't know these things, the baby boomers and even some of the Gen Xers they kind of just look down their nose at us. So I shed a little bit of light on how to get access to therapy, and it's through your job's employee assistance program. The employee assistance program is something that's designed to help any employee of the company get access to certain things, including financial guidance, legal assistance, and of course, in my case, therapy. So I encourage you all to go and take a look at that employee assistance program that your job is offering. And if you want a little bit more information on what an employee assistance program is, I actually talk about it at length in last week's episode. So definitely check that out and get the help that you may need. I think everyone needs therapy to some degree. I think it is something that needs to be looked into. And I think it's something that can be incredibly helpful and insightful for the people involved. Quick sidebar here. I actually just came back from the dentist, guys. I'm going strong. A part of my mouth is numb. So I do apologize if there's any distortion or any weird speech patterns. I do apologize about that. But moving forward anyway, nonetheless, I still wanted to get down and record an episode for you all. And of course, share a little bit of light on my second therapy session. So if you listened to last week's show, you know that I went to therapy and my first session was last week. And my second session was this week. And we talked about a little bit of things that we spoke about last week. And if you're a listener to the show, you heard me mention before that I won't go into too much detail because A, it is personal, but B, it's work-related stress. And a lot of my coworkers do listen to the show. And I don't want to have any coworkers misinterpret what I'm feeling. And I don't want things in my personal life to carry over to my professional life, just like I don't want things from my professional life to carry over to my personal life. I'm a firm believer of separating work and your personal life if you can help it. I know sometimes they do bleed into each other, but if you can help it, it does a lot on your psyche if you can keep them separate. So I won't go into too much detail. I don't want anybody to get offended. That's not my goal. I don't want to intentionally offend anyone. But what I will say is we did speak about things that were bothering me, and some really good feedback and advice that my therapist gave me was we oftentimes get caught up on how other people perceive us, and how other people perceive us and what they think about us. A lot of the times doesn't have a direct correlation or a direct line back to our everyday life. A lot of us get upset with a lot of different things going on in our lives, on who broke up with who's seeing who in what political office set what store is doing this now. And ultimately, it has no effect on our lives on a day-to-day basis. Maybe in, some indirect way, but on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't affect our lives. We can't change the character of the people around us, and we only can focus on ourselves when it comes to certain degrees. He also mentioned that we always should try to be the change that we want to see in life, but understand that we can't necessarily affect the people around us all of the time, and we can't force them to be something that they're not. Just like we don't want to be something that we're not, and we feel uncomfortable when people force us to be something that we're not, we shouldn't expect the same of other people. And we also shouldn't put our standards on other people, because they're different people with different life experiences, and who knows why they are the way that they are, whether that be in a positive way or a negative way. The point is they are who they are. And he gave me some really insightful advice on how to deal with certain adversity and how to deal with certain conflict. And I think I totally embraced it. And I think I was really reluctant at the idea at first, but I think part of being an adult, and in part specifically a mature adult, is learning to embrace things that you're not used to. Change is necessary. And if you're outside of your comfort zone, it isn't always a bad thing. In fact, most times it could be a good thing, because it means that you're growing, you're experiencing new things. And I'm excited for my third session. I'm excited to tell my therapist about some of the things that he recommended that I did put into practice. And I'm excited to see where this takes me in the future. So if there's one thing that I took away from the therapy session, honestly, it's be who you are, because no one else is going to be who you are for you. And although you can pay attention to those around you, you shouldn't worry about those around you if it doesn't necessarily affect who you are. One of the things that he said that sat on my heart throughout the session and even afterwards, even now as I record this, is if it doesn't affect you or loved ones or the people who matter most to you, if it's not causing any negative impact on your loved ones or the people that matter most to you, then why even worry about it? Why even care? And that was really good advice. And even though it's simple advice, it's hard to practice. So I'm trying to practice that. I'm trying to take his advice. I think I've done a good job so far, but I can't just go cold turkey. Things don't happen overnight. It's a process. And I'm looking forward to diving into that. We also spoke about relationships and romance and being romantically involved with people. And he let me know that it's kind of similar to what he said about the work-related stresses. Be who you are and just be the best person that you can be for the person that you're with. And you don't necessarily have to tie the knot too soon. You don't have to feel like you're under pressure to make moves that you feel like society or maybe family members want you to make if you're not comfortable with making it. And it got me to thinking about things like marriage. I'm 28 years old, and a lot of my friends and family and peers are married, and most of whom are about my age or younger. And it gets me to thinking about adults under 30 marrying too early. And I kind of was wrapping my head around what some of the things my therapist said, and I was wrapping my head around what marriage is and what it means to me and what it represents to me. And I don't value marriage, and I don't mean that in a negative or derogatory way. I don't mean that in a way like marriage sucks or it's not important in the sense that people don't need it. I think it's not important in the sense that it shouldn't be the goal that you work towards, in the sense that focus on yourself. So I'm going to get into what my opinion on marriage is, specifically marrying under 30. And then I actually posed a question on social media, and a lot of you had some really, really insightful and unique things to say. Some of you gave, and I'm going to be, you guys know, I would say this to your face too. And in some cases, I actually responded to some people who said this. when I ask a question and you say it depends and you don't say anything after that, why even answer? Why even comment? If I say, hey, in your opinion, what's the best cheesesteak spot in Philly? And you say it depends. I know it depends. Tell me what it depends on. Like, I just such a lazy answer. I'm not going to go on a rant. I feel like I want to go on a rant, but I'm not going to go on a rant. How does that bug you all when you ask somebody their opinion and they say it depends? You kind of just roll your eyes like, I know it depends, dude. Like, what do you think? So, but anyway, a lot of you had some really good feedback. A lot of you guys had really good answers. And I'm going to try to get through as many as I can, but I want to start off with my opinion, and then I'll start off with the two what I feel like were the most powerful things. And then I'm going to read some of the other comments and get you guys' feedback. So my opinion on marriage, specifically marriage under 30. I think marriage is a nice thing to have. I think if you feel like you're ready to spend the rest of your life with this person, you should. I think that marriage should definitely be something should be considered after you achieve certain milestones in life. You look at where you're at financially. You look at where you're at professionally. You look at where you're at from a mature standpoint, from a maturity standpoint. You look at where you're at spiritually, or if you practice a religion religiously. You look at your living situation and your current lifestyle. And you just take a look at certain things that matter, your priorities, Are you willing to put the person that you're in a relationship with, the man or the woman, are you willing to prioritize them to a level that they haven't had before? For example, if you put certain hobbies or certain family members over your current significant other, are you willing to put those hobbies and family members and even your career on the back burner for this person? If the answer is yes to that, then absolutely, I think marriage should be considered. I think a lot of people don't realize that it's family first, but when you get married, that's your family now. And you're creating your family. So before you get married, you're a part of the family, right? I think you can say, yeah, that's my family, but you're a part of a family. You're a part of your mother's and father's family. You are a part of your brother's family, in a sense. You are a part of your aunt's family, in a sense, but it's not your family. Your family is when you get a husband or a wife and you start your family. So the moment that happens is the moment that your husband or wife becomes priority. A lot of people may not agree with what I'm about to say, but in my opinion, your husband or wife is more important than your mother and your father now. If you're old fashioned and your wife is making plates at Thanksgiving, your wife better bring you your plate first before she makes her father's plate. And if anything, it's probably the mother's responsibility to make the father's plate, if you know what I mean. If you're old fashioned and you're a husband and you're looking out for your husband or your wife first, that's important compared to your parents have to take a back burner. And I know a lot of people may have some thoughts about that. Feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, or you can email in. I'll talk if you'll listen at hotmail.com. All of this will be in the description. And I'll mention it again later on, but feel free to reach out to me. Let me know what your opinion is. I personally feel like your husband or your wife, that's your family now. They come before your mom and your dad. Arguably, they come before your kids. I think a lot of people may disagree with that. I know a lot of people who have had kids with people, but they're not married, so they may have a different viewpoint, a different perspective. And I'm willing to listen to those perspectives. I think the only perspective that I take issue with is you're not in this situation, so you're not allowed to have an opinion on it. I remember one of my buddies, one of my roommates, I had an opinion about parenting, and it applied to his situation. And he said, my opinion is invalid and I'm not allowed to have an opinion because I don't have any kids. I think that's a bunch of malarkey. I think it's just like silly as saying it's like, hey, you're not of this race, so you can't have an opinion about this situation. I think you can question someone's ability to relate, but an opinion, everyone has a right to an opinion. You don't have to value that opinion, but you can't sit here and say that someone can't have an opinion on something. That's silly to say. But that's my opinion. I think arguably your husband or your wife even come before your kids, to a degree. And let's just say in certain situations. However, generally speaking, I think marriage is isn't a necessary step. I think a lot of people look at marriage as like, hey, this is something that we have to do. Here's an example. I saw a post on online from one of my friends who said he's willing to date and have romantic and sexual relationships. Again, excuse my speech, guys. Part of my mouth is numb. He's willing to date and have romantic and sexual relationships outside of his race. But when it comes to marriage, he only wants to marry within his race. That's his right. That's his opinion. There was a young lady on that post who shared her opinion, and she said, why waste a person's time then? If you're not going to date with the goal of being to marry them, why even waste your time and date them? To which he replied, the part of the whole dating process and being in a relationship in the first place is trying to figure out who you are as a person. Figuring out what you like and dislike, figuring out what works with and for you and what doesn't work with and for you. You know, you're still figuring out who you are as your person, you know, what you love, what you hate, what you like and dislike. So I think and I know a lot of people, especially the young women who listen, my young lady listeners, I know a lot of you criticize me for only having a male perspective on things, but I need you to realize that if you guys don't call in or email in or give me your opinion on the show, it's going to be tough for me to think otherwise. And I can only go off of my personal experience. And at the end of the day, I am a male. I am a man. So generally speaking, it's my perspective that marriage is usually more interesting to the woman than to the man. Usually any man that wants to get married is because he wants to make the woman in his life happy. Of course, he may feel like he's ready for marriage. You know, I don't want to discount the male's opinion on marriage. But generally speaking, the male gets married for the woman. The man gets married for the woman. Even the whole ceremony behind marriage is generally speaking for the woman. The beautiful dress, the nice flowers, the big ceremony, the fantastic display of food, the fountains made of chocolate, the reception, the whole nine. A lot of that is geared towards the woman. And I think if you ask the majority of your friends, very few would disagree. I think the problem with speaking in general is you always get that one person who doesn't fit the description, so they discount your entire point. I'm more right than I am wrong when it comes to this, in my opinion. I feel like more women would agree that they think about marriage. They're more concerned about marriage than the man is. And I think that almost any man in the history of marriage who marries a woman, 80% of the time is doing it because he wants to make the woman happy. Not saying that he doesn't want to get married, not saying that he's not ready for marriage. All those things may be true, but it's definitely something that he knows that the woman is thinking about and he wants to take it to that next level. There are a lot of women who feel like if marriage isn't the goal when it comes to dating, then the relationship is stagnant and you're just sitting around. I like to question that belief, that ideology. I like to question why any man or any woman would feel like, hey, if we're not dating with the end goal of being married, why are we dating? I would love to know where that thought process comes from. I would love to know why you think marriage is the finish line. And I would love to know why you think marriage makes everything better. Marriage improves everything. I know a really good friend of mine, my friend Rich, he will argue that marriage actually isn't the finish line. In fact, it's the starting point. It's the beginning of the race, some would say. And I think Rich would echo that opinion, that if you think the journey is over once you get married, then you're in for a bumpy ride. So I know one young lady who is currently having problems with, or at least things seem to be better now, but at one point she was telling me how she had problems with her boyfriend and how she's been with him for almost 10 years now. They have a kid together and she feels like they're just sitting there. They're just lying around and nothing's happening. So I asked her, why do you think marriage will fix that? Why do you think a ring on your finger will fix that? And she couldn't really give me an answer. Which leads me to believe that she likes the idea of marriage. She sees all of her friends and family members around her getting married, and she wants that. She wants that idea. She likes that idea of getting married. So she wants that for herself. So how many of you fall into that category where you feel like you like the idea of marriage and you think marriage will fix something? And if you truly believe that, tell me why. I want to get into some of the opinions here because I personally feel like if you're under 30, now it's one thing if you had like a fair amount of relationships under 30, like if you had maybe 3 or 4 relationships under 30, I think you have a good barometer on what you like and dislike. And we are all a byproduct of our experiences, which to that point, if you have very little experience dating, if you only ever been, I know one person who dated their girlfriend right out of high school. That's the only real girlfriend they ever had. And then they ended up getting married. And now this person, and some people find that romantic and they're like, oh, that's sweet, high school sweethearts. But one could argue that, like, hey, how many of us, got into a relationship with someone at 18, we broke up at 20, 21, 22, whatever. And now we're 28, 29, 30, 33, 35, 37. And we're taking a back look at the person and you're like, I must have lost my mind. Why did I even date them? You dated them because at the moment you thought that's what you wanted. And it took for you to go through that experience to realize that that's not what you want. Marriage isn't like dating. Marriage shouldn't be temporary. I think a lot of people look at marriage as like, hey, I'm going to try this thing out to see if I like it. In my opinion, you shouldn't do that. There are some people, even young ladies, who share my opinion, and who also, some people who, feel like that it's okay to get married under 30. So one of my friends, of whom I'm not going to mention my name because I didn't ask her for permission to mention her name on the show. And you guys know how I feel about that. I don't want to go about mentioning your name, but she did comment and she said something really powerful. She said, I've always thought that marriage shouldn't be important. And no matter what people believe, it isn't permanent. What should be important is the actual relationship. Too many people think that being married is more important than who you are married to. Marriage shouldn't change anything. It should be done because you want to, not because you think it's what you have to or that it will make your relationship more legit. I think that was dope. I think that was really powerful, what she said. Just to touch on a few key points there, she did say she always felt like that marriage shouldn't be important, the relationship should be. That is so important. A lot of us focus more on the marriage part of it. Like, hey, I'm so happy to be getting married. I'm so happy to marry. And they walk around like, hey, I'm married. Yeah, but who are you married to? There are a lot more people who will talk about the fact that they're married and that they're looking forward to get married and they want to get married, more than the fact of who they're married to and what the relationship is like. Go around and ask some of your friends, whether they be men or women, and ask them about what they feel like their wedding will be. I guarantee you that the majority of them have an idea what their wedding ceremony would be, where they want it to be at, what it would be like. And I guarantee you that a lot of them have thought about how they want the ceremony to be and where they want it to be, and they put great time and detail and thought into this marriage. But when you ask them about who do you want to be married to, it's like almost like the person is not even in this picture. It's like they're talking about the marriage, but they're not even talking about the person they're being married to. They don't tell you about what their husband or what their wife should be like, or what they want their husband or their wife, the colors they want them to be in, or what they want them to be like, or who they want there at the wedding. They just talk about like, hey, this is how I want the wedding to be, and this is where I want it to be, and this is the type of chocolate that I want running out of the fountain. This is the color of the flowers that, but they don't tell you about who the person is that they want to marry. I think that says a lot. My buddy of mine, who was very, very difficult to track down, and I hope to get him on the show one day, actually said something really powerful. He said, and just to be clear, the question that I posted was, in your opinion, are there more pros or cons to getting married before 30? So that was the question I posted on the Facebook. And here is the buddy, what he said. He said, been on both sides of marriage and divorce. Relationships cost time, money, and attention that could be spent reading, growing a business, etc. So it definitely needs to add a ton of value to your outside. It definitely needs to add a ton of value to you outside of sex and helping with loneliness, both for the decision itself to be in a relationship and especially leading into marriage, or you're better off adding value to each other as friends. That was worded a little bit weird, but he's basically saying it needs to add value. Marriage needs to add value outside of just feeling lonely and having sex. If they do, they're worth sacrificing all that. And any age is good to be married and taking the risk. I agree with what he says. A lot of people look to marriage, like I said earlier, as a solution, right? It'll fix something. Hey, we've been dating for 8 years. Hey, we've been dating for 15 years. Why aren't we married? Let's get married. Well, what will that change? I know growing up, there was a neighbor that we had on my block who has been with the person that he was dating for 25 years. So, they were married. I think it's called common law marriage or something along those lines. But they were married in that regard, but they weren't actually never had a wedding and a ceremony or anything like that. No rings on their fingers. And he mentioned to me that his girlfriend spoke about it before, mentioned it before, but they both agreed that neither one of them really want marriage. It doesn't really change anything. It doesn't really change anything if you think about it. I mean, legally it does, but practically, does it really? So that was pretty cool for him to share that. Let's see if we can find another opinion. So one of my Lodge brothers mentioned this. I think it was pretty cool. He said, if you get married before 30, how could you compare? If one would have some semblance, they'd be on a second marriage. That would then be an additional variable. So in other words, what he's saying is, if you don't have anything to compare it to, how can you really know that you're ready? Which kind of echoes the sentiment that I mentioned before, that if you don't really have much dating experience, how do you know that you're ready? Another one of my buddies said, if you have to ask, don't do it. I don't know if I agree with that. Let's see what else we got. So one of my other buddies here, let's see. I'll say it's John. John doesn't mind me mentioning his name. Here's John. So he clears his throat. He types that in, clears throat. For those under 30, find someone who allows you to be your truest self with. What does that mean? Find someone who you can make inside jokes with. Find someone who shares the same passions as you do. Find someone who understands your hobbies and will enjoy them with you. I think that's very important. A lot of us get with people because they like us, not because they like what we do. You will have the best time with someone who you never skip a beat with. It's a partnership. Encourage growth between each other, support each other's dreams, and have each other's backs. Be willing to step out of your shell with that person. A lot of people don't like to be vulnerable when tackling love and marriage, but you can't have a successful relationship without it. Both of you have to be willing to work through it all. A hard time can't be, why won't you tell me the password to your phone? It has to mean something like, we're living out of our car because we're in between jobs. That's a tough time. People put on a facade. And after a while, you get tired of not doing that thing you love because they don't like it, or not getting what you want because they won't do it. Get to know what drives them. Where do they see themselves? What are their hobbies? We all constantly evolve. You have to roll with the punches. And when something falls apart, be willing to fix it. So he's basically saying that you can get married under 30 as long as you find the right person. If you find the right person that is willing to be with you, you feel like you can walk, step, and stride with, then absolutely, then marriage is okay. Now, the last opinion that I want to share was really, really powerful, and I wanted to share it with you all. It was like the best thing. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find it. I posted the same question on Instagram. Here it is. So I asked the question, same question on Instagram, and the one of my followers said, the most important thing to consider is, does the person you are planning to spend forever with compliment you, and do you do the same for them? So I asked, do you think someone without much life experience, or someone who's had little time to figure themselves out, can know what they compliment or what compliments them? To which he replied, which was really powerful to me, I wouldn't advise someone who hasn't had time to figure themselves out to make that level of commitment. Just like being in a relationship and not having a true understanding of who you really are. It's a trap. You can't be a compliment to another person and be anonymous to yourself. The experiences we go through in life help us to know who we are, what we're made of, and do we crack under pressure or rise from the ashes. In discovering who you are, you will find with whom you should be with. I totally agree, and that's part of my argument, that if you're under 30 and you haven't really had much dating experience, how do you know that you're ready for marriage? And this isn't me critiquing the experience. I know a lot of my friends who are under 30 who are married might take a look at this and me like critiquing your decision or judging your decision. I want you to know that like I can still love you and be happy for you and to still have my own opinion on something. I'm definitely not judging your situation. And for some people, it works. I mean, take a look at a lot of our parents and grandparents who got married when they were teenagers in some cases, who are still married to this day. So it definitely can work for some people. But I take a look at people like Sophie Turner and Joe Jonas, and I take a look at people like Ariana Grande and Logic, or is it Pete Davidson? Or is it Logic? Well, we don't know that Pete Davidson and Logic are the same people, or the same person anyway. I've never seen them in the same place at one time, but I'm pretty sure it's Pete Davidson. But anyway, Ariana Grande and Pete Davidson. I mean, you take a look at those two couples and how young they are. Sophie Turner's 22 years old. Joe Jonas is 28. Pete Davidson, I believe, is like 24. Ariana Grande is 25. You take a look at this, like, in most cases, like, these people are very, very young and they're living a certain lifestyle that may detract from the time that requires them, or at least the time that they have to like get to know themselves. So I wonder if if they know themselves well enough to know that they're ready for that. So I want you to hear you guys' opinion. Feel free to reach out. I'll Talk If You'll Listen is the name of the show. And you can search that on, Instagram, Twitter. All of this will be in the description of the show. So you can definitely check that out. And speaking of supporting the show, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for all of the patrons who have supported the show so far. You guys are awesome. You guys are helping me get closer to that goal of the new microphone. And I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy the exclusive content that's going on the exclusive Facebook page. And if you guys have any suggestions or feedback for the show, definitely let me know. For those of you who don't know what Patreon is, I talk about it a bit in last week's show. And I also made a small brief intro video on my Patreon page, so you can go check that out. And that's Patreon. It's Patreon for November.com/ITIYL. Go check that out. Check out the video and take a look at what I'm working towards. I'm working towards a new microphone. So if you want to support me, if you really want to help out the show, or if you just hate how I sound, if you hate how the sound quality is, go check that out. Any support that you can give, I greatly appreciate, and it'll help me get closer to my goal. And I can't wait to hit that goal with you all. So go check that out and check that video out to get a little bit more insight on what Patreon is and how it helps. In the meantime, guys, if you listened to last week's show, you also know that I featured a business on the show surrounding things involving engineering and technical prowess and technical know-how. And I encourage you all to go check that out. It's called the business is called the Stream Engine. They have a class coming up later on in the summer, late summer, early fall, that you can check out. And I encourage you all to check that out, especially if you want to get more knowledge behind things like engineering, things like technical troubleshooting, and things like cryptocurrency, right? You hear this thing like Bitcoin all the time. You may not know what that is or how that works. So definitely go check that out in last week's episode. And again, that's the Stream Engine. You can get in touch with those guys at thestreamengine@gmail.com, or just hit me up and let me know if you want to know more about it. This week's featured organization is a nonprofit organization who has a very noble goal. When my buddy, who is a senior board member, reached out to me to like their Facebook page, I took a look at some of the things that they were doing, and I took a look at what their goal was. And I'm all about positivity, and I want to feature businesses that promote positivity and have a genuine, authentic nature. Like they're not just in it for the money. They genuinely want to help people. This featured business is called Kelani's Butterflies. It specifically helps to provide resources, tools, and guidance in therapy for anyone who has lost a family member, specifically parents, under the age of 12. And the resources that they're offering, some of the things that they've done have been great. And I wanted to reach out to them and get them on the show because I think it's just so powerful for us to find organizations like this so we can support them and support our peers, especially if they're owned by people who look like us and sound like us. I think that's really important. This business had a special place in my heart because I've lost family members at a young age, distant family members, but family members nonetheless. And it takes a unique type of toll on what your perspective and your viewpoint on life is. And earlier in the episode, I talked about how we're expected to just know where to go to get help. And if we don't know where to go to get help, we kind of get criticized or ridiculed for not knowing, for our ignorance. So I wanted to feature this business to just spread a little bit of light on what they're doing and how to go about getting resources for anyone who falls into this category. So without further ado, here is Kalani's Butterflies and what they are all about.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another segment of the Idle Thoughts interview section. This particular section is a little unique. Like last week, I mentioned I like to have businesses that I believe in and businesses that I feel are making a change in the community, a positive role within the community, feature on the show. I like to give my peers that avenue, that spotlight to promote positivity. This time around, we have two guests on the show. One, a longtime friend I went to high school with. Another friend I just met today, and I'm looking forward to diving into it. We have the nonprofit organization Kalani's Butterflies on the show, and we have Lola, who is the founder, and we also have Robert, who is the senior board member of Kalani's Butterflies. How are you two today?
I'm doing well.
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. Awesome. So I really wanted to dive into this. When I say I was invited to the Facebook page, oftentimes our peers, they create these Facebook pages and you get kind of like spammy invites, where you get this invite where it's like, hey, like my SoundCloud, and you want to support, but if you don't really believe in the product, you're kind of like, hey, I'm a little bit hesitant. Your mission and what the nonprofit stands for really touched my heart, and I couldn't wait to like the page and have you guys featured on the show. So Lola, I would like to start with you. What is Kalani's Butterflies, and what led you to starting everything?
So Kalani's Butterflies is essentially a nonprofit foundation geared towards helping the families, the mothers and fathers specifically, of deceased children under the age of 12. And when we say help, we mean that can go in broad range from funeral arrangements from the very first moment that they lose their child, anonymous care packages. We offer no-cost therapy, also no-cost therapeutic activities, which have helped me a lot myself, and minor monetary assistance, if at all possible, will help them with kind of just getting back on their feet.
I think that's awesome. It's not many resources out there that are accessible to people who have lost loved ones, especially at that age and that young. What led you to get behind this idea, and what led you to create the nonprofit? What was the motivating force behind the vision for this organization?
So on May 2nd of last year, actually, I lost my daughter, Kalani. Hence the name, Kalani's Butterflies. She was my only daughter. And so in search of support groups and assistance and getting back some of the sense of normalcy in my life, I met a lot of people, a lot of amazing parents along the way, a lot of hurt parents along the way, a lot of families along the way who were just in search of the same sense of normalcy as myself. I had a ton of support from my family, which was okay for me, but being the type of person that I am, I'm always caring. Even so many days after just losing my daughter, I was still caring about other people and how they felt about, not being able to see her as well. I met just these people who had a tough time with not being consumed with, sadness or being consumed with having lost their child, even families that are so consumed themselves with just trying to help their family members get through the tough moments that they may be having or the tough time that they may have been having in just that moment. And they would always ask me myself, well, why do you smile? How are you so able to just continue on with life? And I just would tell them, it couldn't be anything but my daughter just continuously motivating me to do so. I did notice that the common denominator amongst most of us, including myself, was a lack of support at times with just one-on-one time with one person. when I went in search of a therapist or support groups myself, I did realize how much a therapist costs. And that was one of the major things with me. I had insurance, so I could afford it, but even that is not always the best route. And some people just don't have that. They don't have the ability to afford a therapist. And that one-on-one time could definitely help you. Sometimes they don't have the ability to afford. And it's sad to say this, that people charge to help others just get through certain moments like that. And so I just said, you know what, I need to be able to do something else for these people. If they're asking me, they see something within me that they want to see within themselves. And if I wasn't sitting most of those days wondering or missing my daughter, I was trying to figure out how to help those moms and dads. And from that, it birthed my foundation.
Wow, that's beautiful. That is so beautiful. And I'm even more motivated now to see where the business goes and see where the nonprofit goes. I think it's great. I think who we are during rough times and the behavior and emotion that we show help define us as a person and help strengthen our resolve. So thank you for your vision, and thank you for the drive and the passion. I think it's really awesome to have that out there and see that people in our peer group have positive intentions. I think that's awesome. So thank you so much for that. Now, Robert, you're a senior board member, and I know to get on the board, aside of you just needing a vote and all the political administrative stuff, there has to be a desire or a want to even be involved. So, what led you to Kalani's Butterflies, and why did you feel like it was so important for you?
Well, honestly, I recently came from deployment. I think it was about a week after she unveiled the nonprofit, and she contacted me with very, very quickly because she wanted me to be a part of it from the beginning. I was not with her physically, but I was with her during our time of meeting when she first found out that she was pregnant in 2016. And we've been friends since college years, so she knew that I was somebody that she could talk to, someone that she could lean on, and definitely someone who would put forth effort into making sure this grows, right? And I'm here to support her personally, and I'm definitely here to support the organization because I understand that something like this takes time and it takes patience at the very beginning, and you want to go somewhere for other people. You don't want to get to a point where it's big personally so that way our pockets are full of money or anything like that. We want to make sure that the larger we get, the more people that we can help. And me as a person with children, I have 2 children myself. If I had something like that happen to me where I lost one of my children at any age, I would be very hurt. So I can understand the sentiment. And if I needed those resources, I know that me being a member of the armed forces, those resources are readily available to me, but they're not readily available to everyone. So I'm just trying to sit here and do my part, whether it is just get the information out to people or be someone that they can talk to in order to get the resources that they need.
That's awesome. They say like-minded people naturally gravitate towards each other, and you touched on a lot of key points there. Biggest takeaway is the fact that you're aware of the fact that you have access to this stuff, but not everyone else does. And I think that's a key component to getting help and getting support is knowing where to go to get it. So that's really important. It's really powerful. Now, I liked you guys' Facebook page, and there's some cool information on you guys' Facebook page. And I saw some pretty cool accomplishments on your Facebook page. What would you say are some of the biggest things that you guys accomplished so far?
So right now, I would say that generally everything about the organization today is the biggest accomplishment when you really stop and think about it. So its creation, that's major. Just its creation and being able to have something official that allows us to help people, that's a big deal. The amount of money that we've been able to raise, which I won't give any figures right now, but the amount of money that we've been able to raise in support of people because we've done different fundraisers. We've had a couple of businesses and other places help us by selling products and then saying they would donate some of the proceeds towards our nonprofit organization. And then we also had a business that would match our donations dollar for dollar, right? So these are small businesses. These have been local businesses, but we are able to garner a lot of support from the community abroad. And it's a social media presence that we have right now, and we're trying to grow that. We're trying to move forward just from being on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram to being, more like a household name if at all possible. Like I said before, it's definitely difficult being young and being small right now. But if you just look at the track record from the beginning in May So right now, we've done a lot for multiple families. We've done a lot for ourselves as far as just being able to appreciate what we can do for other people. And our next goal on the whole is just to gain more awareness. You know, like I said, we can only do so much on social media, so we're looking at different ways to raise funds and different ways to get our name out there. We're going as far as getting business cards. I mean, it's something small to say, you know, a large nonprofit organization or to a corporation right now. But for us, it's a big step to say, hey, here's a tangible piece of media that you can look. You can see the name, the founder, you have some information, an email address or something like that. So that way you can get in contact with someone. And so that way you can also spread the word. The bottom line is that right now we're taking small steps and large steps to just doing the best that we can for the organization and the best that we can for whoever may need our services in the future.
That's awesome. I'm so proud of not only just you two, but just the idea behind the organization. I think it's so cool to get behind something and really be passionate about it and just to watch it grow and evolve. And just to, like you mentioned, like everything is an accomplishment. Every heart you touch, every life you help, every business card you hand out, it's a huge accomplishment. Every like on Instagram or Facebook that you get is an accomplishment. And I'm so happy for you guys moving forward. So speaking of social media, could you reiterate some of the platforms that you guys are on and, you know, what are the handles? How can we find you?
Okay, so for donations, we have Cash App and we also have PayPal. And that's for the Cash App tag, it'll be $ Kalani's Butterflies, spelled as KHELANIS, and then Butterflies, BUTTERFLIES. And the name's spelled the same for all of the situations. For example, the PayPal is Kalani'sEvent@gmail.com. And then for our Twitter and Instagram handles, it's @KH_butterflies. We had to get a little bit creative with those because apparently there are other Kalani's out there in the world. And then also our Facebook page is also Kalani's Butterflies, and you can see the photo that we have. It's in purple and there's butterflies with a white background on all of our social media. So if you're looking for it and you see that photo in the background, that's definitely our official page.
Fantastic. Well, hey, you guys and girls, you heard it here first. Check out Kalani's Butterflies. You can hit me up for more information as well. I'll be more than happy to pass along the information and get you connected with Robert and with Lola. And feel free to reach out, even if it's just an inquiry. You may know somebody who's hurting, who's grieving, and who may need the support and the help, and they don't know where to go. They don't know where to get it. So you don't know what you don't know. And when you do know what the problem is, when you do know what the issue is, you become empowered. That's the first step to getting help. So definitely check those guys out. Okay, guys, thank you so much. This interview has been very enlightening and inspiring. I think it's awesome that you two have come together to deliver a message of support and positivity in the community. And I encourage everybody to like the page on Facebook and to do a little bit more research into what you're doing. And, of course, and to reach out if they need any help. So thank you so much, you two. You two have been great, and I really appreciate you being on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate you as well.
Absolutely, Tim. Can't wait to do this another time.
Guys, you can't sit here and tell me that didn't pull on your heartstrings a little bit. I think it's really, really dope with what they're doing and what Lola and Robert are achieving. And I'm really happy to support some genuine people. So definitely check that out. And you heard there's several different ways that they can that you can get in touch with them or that you can support their cause. Feel free to reach out to me if you want a little bit more info, or just follow their Facebook page or Instagram page. In the meantime, guys, thank you for sticking around for another week. Thank you for listening to me talk and rant and rave. I appreciate you tuning in as always. I'll speak to you all on the internet through social media. And of course, I'll see you all in the streets. In the meantime, as always, I got to get ready for work. I got to go make that money. As always, guys, I love talking to you. And in the meantime, I'll keep talking if you'll listen. Take care.